was a while back, I was reading one of your comic strips. I was like, well, this is really cool. So then I started looking more into her and invited her to come. So that's cool. I'm always looking for something different, you know.
I've got different.
And I want to thank this month's sponsor for the program is Earl Tyler. And Laura lives over in Lone Oak. She received a fine arts degree from Charlton State University and has taught art at both the high school and college level. She currently teaches art and creativity courses through Skillshare and some other online platforms. And she also, like I mentioned, is the creator of the comic strips Glitter, Dill, and Greg, and has just released, or has illustrated a, can't find that in here, but I think a knitting book. Is that right? That just came out, or is it?
It'll be out in 2022 from Abrams Publishing.
So without further ado, I'll let her take it away.
Hi everybody, like she said, I'm Laura. I pretty much, if it's a creative thing, I dabble in it or do it to some extent. My primary job is I'm an illustrator and an art teacher, and I also work as a musician and just as a performer. I have a theater, musical theater background. I have a degree in art and theater, so I love all things artistic. So I'm going to play one more song before I start talking about art. This song is called Hourglass. And I guess I'm at a time in my life where I have two children that are in elementary and middle school, and my babies are growing up, and my parents are getting older, and I'm losing grandparents, and I guess it's just, especially with the pandemic, it feels like a very mortal time to me, and I'm just really conscious of time passing. So anyway, the concept of hourglasses matters to me.
Rocket high, comets fly, you and I could take a ride and fly away to Neverland and give our best to Peter Pan. When you reach for the stars, don't forget who you are, and please don't turn around and grow within the world. All right, let me figure out how to move my little clicky button. You said it's up and down.
Yes,
For
I
the
think
slide?
so, yeah.
Well, that's me. That's social media me. Come on in if you like. Okay. One thing I wanted to start with was a series I did a previous fall called Fall Country Classics. I absolutely love country music. I spent a lot of time with my grandparents growing up, and they are huge country music fans, so I grew up on classic country music. And I was thinking about, it was during a time where I had a lot of other stuff going on, and I was just thinking, what brings me comfort and joy? And one, old country music reminds me of my grandparents. It's comforting. And I love fall. I love Halloween. I love the harvest festivals. I love everything about fall. And I love knitwear. I'm illustrating a knitting book. I love to knit. So I thought, how can I combine, sometimes for an art series, I'll combine a couple of things I really love. And I love fall and country people and knitwear. So that's what I did with every piece. This is Apples for June. I was trying to imagine what Johnny Cash would wear knitwear, and that was hard to come up with. But I thought he might, if June made him a scarf, he might wear it. And I figured he might stop by on one of his long jaunts home and get her some apples. And one of the things I wanted to show here is, even though this is an art piece I did as a portrait, it's kind of an editorial illustration piece, like you might see in a magazine or something like that, I also do pattern design, and sometimes as a jumping off point to make patterns that you would see on anything from, oh boy, look around, there's a pattern on everything, you know, from clothing to a Kleenex box to a file folder. Everywhere you go, there are graphics on everything. So sometimes I will take literal colors from these pieces. This is abstracted apples. I was trying to use something black because he was the man in black, and I wanted more masculine colors in this, so I used abstracted apples. I used literal apples. Then in some of these, I took leaf shapes and I played with kind of making them in different patterns that were mirrored. So that's sometimes how I'll get inspiration for a pattern collection. Here is good old George and Tammy back before the DIBO RCD. I like to imagine them stargazing while things were still good. You know what I mean? I don't know if it's true, but I read she was a hairdresser. Is that true? I can see it with all that coiffure going on. But I think everybody's Mima in the 70s had, or at least everybody I knew had one of those kind of crumbly orange crochet things.
Can you move the...
Oh, sure, yes, my harvest. Or block it. Hang on just a second. Ooh. Okay, get my workout today. How's that?
Great.
Is the stand in your way, anybody? Is this in your way? Okay, there you go. Thanks for mentioning it. All right, so there's George and Tammy. We lost him during COVID. Charlie Pride, he was a Dallas resident. I was really sad that he died during COVID, but I like to imagine, I call this Charlie's perfect pumpkin. I like to imagine him somewhere in a happy place picking out his pumpkin this year. So here's Dolly's Drive. She lives up in the Blue Ridge Mountains, so I tried to paint a scene, and she has an old yellow truck I've always thought was great. And this is another example of taking some ideas from an original painting and pairing it with patterns for a pattern collection. Hee-haw! Did you hear about Hee-haw? I love Hee-haw. Buck and Roy, it made me tickle to think of them on a tandem bike. My husband and I have a tandem bike, and sometimes I'll ride on the back. And last time we were at White Rock Lake riding, some lady said, "She's not pedaling." And I was like, shh. Anyway, so I got so vested. Now he's realized that I don't pedal really hard, so I work a lot harder. And I like to imagine good old Merle Haggard has a soft side where he has a candle night, where he just has cocoa. Maybe there's whiskey in there. We don't know, but I like to imagine he has a soft side with candles and nature poems some night. And this is Loretta Lynn making soup. Until I was embarrassingly old, I thought she was married to Conway Twitty, just because they sang so many duets. So I was quite a bit older and very shocked to realize that she was not married to Conway Twitty. And here's Willie. Here's Willie for president. My dad went to grad school in Austin, so I've always had a soft spot for old ladies. And at one point, my dad had some really long braids, and his voice sounds amazingly like Willie Nelson, to the extent people thought my father was Willie Nelson sometimes when he had that hairstyle. So I love the sound of Willie Nelson's singing voice, but I even more like the sound of his being interviewed. It sounds like my father's voice. And again, in all of this series, I had knitwear, and when that was going on, I also posted patterns of knitwear that you could knit that was similar to the stuff in there. You're welcome to come in if you'd like. And Patsy Cline is one of my personal favorites. Patsy Cline in a cord maze. This is kind of a dorky knitting joke, but this bobble stitch is called popcorn stitch sometimes, the little balls you'll see on sweaters sometimes. So that was just kind of my own personal little knitting joke there. People always ask about my art studio, so I was going to show a few pictures. It's always a mess, but it's creative. I have a collection of, I do a lot of assemblages where you put art together, but I tell my husband if it's in rainbow order, it's not hoarding, so. Anyway, we went to a barn sale, maybe 20 years ago, and it was some guy that used to have a booth at Canton, and he had maybe 100 pickle jars full of junk, and he just was getting rid of all of them, and he sold them to me, so I color-coded everything I wanted to keep in them, and I keep a lot of my supplies in these enormous old pickle jars from Canton because they're clear and they're easy to see. This is my fiesta room. I collect Mexican folk art. It used to be a lot easier to go to Mexico, but I love Mexican masks and Mexican carvings. And through it, you see my Halloween room. When my children were small, I had a business making Halloween and Christmas and holiday toys, and I've just always liked Halloween. That room was a pain to paint. I painted every single stripe on that ceiling. And this is a little window to my husband's workshop. We call it the love window, but we wave at each other while we're both working. My studio's in here, and he works on the other side. This is my Scheherazade room. I've always been entranced by the Tale of 1001 Nights, where she had to tell him a new story every night, or the Sultan would kill her. And each lantern I created with a sort of a faux stained glass scene represents one of the stories I imagined that she would tell every night. And like a swinging bed, and I use this as my guest room when people visit, and it's also a place for my daughters to hang out and watch movies in the studio with me. And I keep all my art upstairs in the loft with some of my hearts. I am a member of the Texas Cartoonists. I've been a member since 2018, I think, 2017. That is the Texas chapter of the National Cartoonist Society, and it's just a business organization. But they're a very fun, eclectic group of people, so pretty much anyone who's a cartoonist that lives in Texas, we get together, we do various things. This is my comic strip called Glitterville. I have a very rude narwhal named Nadine that nobody likes, and her best frenemy, who's a very nice, perky unicorn named Eunice. So most of that comic strip is those two getting up to hijinks. This is Mr. Pansy, the HR manager. So anyway, I wrote that up until the pandemic, and one of the things we do with the National Cartoonist Society is every year we work with St. Jude Children's Hospital, and we do some sort of, we help with their fundraising, and a lot of times we provide a station for the kids because a lot of the kids can't participate if they're ill or sick, so we try to do some fun cartooning activities for the kids, and we'll take turns working with the general public kids too, doing cartooning during these events. I give talks different places. One thing the Texas Cartoonists and I worked on was a panel at UTA where we discussed, it was in conjunction with Etta Holm. Etta Holm, the editorial and cartoonist, passed away. They left all of her holdings and collections to UTA, and so we kind of did a end-of-life celebration for her. We were really looking at the future of comics. It's very odd to be a cartoonist in this day and age because up until maybe 20 years ago, the advent of the internet kind of, on some level, ruined cartooning as we knew it because it was in papers. And there's a limited, papers just keep getting smaller and smaller, and budgeting keeps getting smaller. So you kind of have to be grandfathered in as a cartoonist in the paper now. So really the only avenues for new cartoonists are online. So it presents some interesting opportunities and challenges. So we were just discussing some of the ways that cartoonists are dealing with getting their work to the public in this general age. So most of us use social media to try to do that. Another thing that's been keeping me busy is last month I was in a circus. I spent all of September performing with a circus. All of the circuses were grounded during COVID because you couldn't perform. You couldn't be in a building with a bunch of people. And I met a lovely family called the Espana family. They are a 5th-generation circus family. And they store their equipment in Greenville, Texas. They tour all over America. They tour Canada, Japan, New Zealand. But during COVID, they were grounded and they were stuck here. And I met a member of, they're from all over the world actually. A lot of them are from Texas and Mexico. But the woman I met is their choreographer who is from London. And I started taking lessons from her. So I've been training really hard for about a year. And I do lira. It's this metal hoop that looks like a big metal hula hoop. And it's metal and it spins around in a circle. And I do tricks on that. So I spent all of last month performing with a circus. I don't know if I'm going to do that again or not. I'm really, really sore. I'm covered in bruises. But that was a bucket list item for me. I couldn't say no to being in a circus. So that's something I've been doing lately. It was really fun and new for me. During the pandemic, my regular comic felt a little fluff and almost felt a little disrespectful to be writing a comic during, a time we didn't know what was going to happen, but humor is kind of how my brain is geared, and in my sketchbooks, I kept drawing. I keep sketchbooks every day just for my own sanity, sort of a visual journaling process, And I kept drawing this green pickle-looking monster I called Greg. I decided to call him Greg with 3 G's. And I used this comic strip I drew at home to kind of process some of my thoughts about the pandemic and the coronavirus. And in those early days, I was kind of a mess. You know, I didn't know what was going to happen. I was very fearful for my children. I was fearful for the older people in my family. For myself, I was washing groceries when I came home. I mean, I was really neurotic about it. So I hoped that Greg was kind of a representation of our collective neuroses at that time, and I think some other people could relate to feeling this way. But these were some of the original sketches. I went on to working digitally, but initially I was working in gouache and pen and chalk, and these were some of the original drawings I did. And I would just send them to friends as a hello, you know, because we couldn't see each other, and so they were kind of just these strange little wacky greeting cards and thoughts and feelings I was sharing with friends. But these are what I was going through. I was so anxious during the beginning of this. I would tell myself, you can look at news once a day. That's it. You look at news once a day, but then I would be back on the internet looking at coronavirus numbers. And then we all remember this problem, right? Right. I've heard that may be a problem again soon. I think people just start rumors, so we'll buy a lot of toilet paper. But oh, that was stressful. This actually happened to me in Walmart. You know, I got all suited up for Walmart, and I called them canned yums to protect that lady's identity. But I was in Walmart and there were about 3 sacks of flour left, and a woman was reaching for them, and I said, I was thinking, oh, there's 3 sacks. I said, oh, there's enough, go ahead, you go first. And she took them all. She took all the flour. And I was trying to make bread, you know, we were all making sourdough, and she took all the flour, and I was just shocked. I was like, she took all the flour. And then I've been on the other side of it, you know, where there's 1 gallon of milk left. And I have a family, I have kids, I'm like, we need milk, we eat cereal. And I'm thinking, does somebody need that milk more than I do? And it was just, it was stress-inducing to buy groceries. I couldn't sleep. Did y'all have problems sleeping during? I really had trouble sleeping, and I just remember my poor little children with their faces pressed to the glass. You know, they would want to go out, and in the beginning we weren't sure if it was safe, so we were just so stir-crazy. Then we all got fat. We just ate so much, and then, you know, as we reintroduced our lives back to kind of being normal again, there was the stress over, well, are these people careful? Do these people wash their hands? Are they germy? And it was just a mess. I would try to do yoga, and like Greg, I could never figure out if I'm doing it right. You know, I was always upside down. Every time I tried to meditate, I just had 15 more thoughts of worry in my head. So, just some more Greg stuff. He doesn't have a place to put his hand sanitizer, so we taped it to him. And he doesn't have the ears, so I duct taped his stuff. My husband says he has soft-boiled egg eyes. This happened to me too. I was at Walmart, and some lady took off her mask and sniffed just about every orange in the orange pile. And I'm like, now I can't eat those oranges. So Greg's mom's bugging him to come to church because there's a cute single lady, but he's social distancing. So these were the real problems I was hearing people discussing with it. You know, just kind of some generational gaps too. You know, I think people my age sometimes were a little more neurotic than some of our parents were. That some people were ultra careful. So everybody had different views on how careful we should or should not be, and it was kind of comic in a way looking at it from a distance. But when we were in it, it was stressful. Greg decided to order a baton and learn to twirl. We all picked up new hobbies. I decided to learn circus. You know, we all did something. I think we all made more sourdough than we will ever want to eat again. So that was great. And sometimes I would draw him in my daily sketchbooks. I would pick a famous work of art, and I would draw Greg as the famous work of art. So that was one of those. I did the Scream. I did the Birth of Venus. I should have put a few more of those in. But anyway, maybe I should do an Audie Murphy Greg. No, we'll see. Some people ask how I work. I work in all different ways. I work in traditional styles. I use oil. I love oil paints, but they take forever. They stink to high heaven. I work in acrylics, gouache. One thing I do when I'm working for a publisher or, you know, a professional thing, I usually go to my iPad in a program called Procreate, and these are some examples of how it's on a pad like this, and then you use a thing called it's just an Apple Pencil. You draw like you would with a pencil. But you can really make it look like a lot of traditional mediums. I can make it look like acrylic or pastel, or I can make it look like ink with a color fill in it. I can try to make it sketchy with pencil. So it gives me all the same options that I would use working in my studio, but it's a lot faster and it's easier for me to get it to a publisher or an editor because I can send it over the internet quickly. This is an example of Willie Nelson. I paint exactly like I would on canvas, except I'm using a computer. I start with a traditional background, basic sketches, and then I work the facial features from forward to backwards, and I use every step I would, but I'm doing it on my computer instead. So that painting, for example, took 10,000 painting strokes, which is about comparable. I've never tracked it. I've never counted 1, 2, 3 while I'm painting, but I think it takes about the same amount of time for me to paint a digital portrait as it does a portrait with oils. There we go. Here's an example of the knitting book I've illustrated. I've co-illustrated with another author. There are 2 knitwear designers who have created, this is the world's first knitting graphic novel. I think they're trying to make it a little more knitting, a little more appealing to a younger generation. So they're making it more like a comic book form where people are going to the store and picking out their yarn. But I spent a couple of years drawing a whole bunch of knots, a whole bunch of really, really intricate, particular knots. But I love knitting. But after doing this for about 2 years, I had to take a break for a little while. But that's gonna be fun, and that's coming out in 2022 from Abrams. So I look forward to seeing what that's gonna look like. All the books are stuck on some barge in China right now, the publisher told us. We have ordered them, and due to some sort of restrictions, we're just waiting for the books to make their way here. Here's an example of a traditional oil painting. I used to do a lot of pet portraits. This one's actually in oil, and this is just an example of a pet portrait I would do. Some years, just to give myself something different creative to do, I take on different challenges. In a previous October, I participated in what's called Inktober, and a bunch of artists get together and we come up with prompts for every day of the month. One day was bat, one day was vampire, one day was twins, witch, mummy, whatever. And then you attempt to create one piece of art every day during that month, just using ink. I chose to use ink with one of those old-timey dip pens with a feather coming out of it, and then I would color in some of the areas with it ink diluted with a paintbrush, diluted with water, so it made different shades of gray. So sometimes it's just fun to work in a different medium. One month I did Feline February, where I painted a cat every single day in February, and these were fun. I just let them be silly cats. Remember, what is the name of that movie? Oh my gosh. Sally Field, Burt Reynolds. What is that? Not Cannonball Run. Is it Cannonball Run?
No, I don't think so.
I cannot believe I'm missing that.
She would know. Oh, God.
You're the movie lady. Yeah, you should know this one. They had that really cool
Eastbound and Down.
Yes. Anyway, those were mine. But I have friends who have cats named Smokey and Bandit, so that was their cats. We'll think of it later. Here's another example of traditional oil painting.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Smokey and the Bandit.
Yeah.
There we go. It's there. Right there. I had it. Just let it go. Sometimes when I work for gallery style paintings, I work in kind of a surreal manner. I like things that are realistic looking, but have a little bit of magical or mysterious twist on them. And sometimes they're mythological. This one was for a show, for the Dia de los Muertos show of the Bathhouse Cultural Center in Dallas. And everyone tries to bring a new take on the Dia de los Muertos tradition, where the Katrina dolls kind of represented man's hubris, thinking we'll live forever, and they were frequently done up in really, big makeup and hair, just to kind of show the vanity of, trying to look good while you're alive because we're all going to die. So anyway, it's an interesting, lovely tradition, but a lot of the artists will have different takes on it. So that was an example from this show. This piece, I've always liked surreal art. I used to manage a gallery in Austin, and one of my favorite artists is Salvador Dali, and I worked several Salvador Dali shows, and I know his publisher's daughter is Christina Argelay, who manages his holdings, his collections that have been published, and I talked to her a lot about his work, and I've been pretty influenced by his work, and a lot of things, just kind of have a realistic painting style with very odd things going on within them. But a lot of his paintings have a really personal meaning to him, and a lot of mine do for me as well. This one is the meadow where I live, actually. This is the meadow. I live out in the woods, but my studio overlooks a hay meadow out, and I've got a bunch of oak trees in the woods. And these are the roses I had in my wedding bouquet. And this is my eye I painted. And I asked my youngest daughter, I was feeling sad, she's getting older, and she used to call them flutterbys, and now she's too old for that. But I asked her what her favorite one was, and she said it was a buckeye, but she always really liked the caterpillars. For some reason, she liked the buckeye caterpillar. So this is a buckeye caterpillar. This is called Rose and Buckeye, and this is me cradling a little caterpillar form of my daughter. So that was kind of a personal piece. But a lot of my paintings look a little odd, but they have a lot of personal meaning to me. This is a piece I did also for an exhibition at the Bathhouse Cultural Center in Dallas called La Flor de Vida, and it was an exhibition that was centered around the life of Frida Kahlo, and everyone just produced pieces that had some sort of tie to Frida Kahlo. There is a Greek myth of the three fates that there are these three goddesses in Greek history that one of them they would basically control your life's duration. They would spin your web of your life. One of them would measure how long it was going to be, how colorful, sometimes drops of blood would fall, and they would designate how colorful your life would be. And then the final step of the way, your thread would be cut. So it was kind of an allegory of life and death in Greek history. And another thing artists would do from the surreal period sometimes is they would paint themselves into things. So I painted myself as one of the spinners. I love yarn stuff, so I used myself as spinning. I also spin yarn. I painted Frida Kahlo. She had a tradition of painting herself in animal forms, and she would often depict herself in the form of a deer. And I used her as the measurer. There was kind of a nitty-nutty, kind of a measuring fiber rack you would use to measure. So this is kind of just an extrapolation on that. And then I also painted Remedios Varo, who was another famous surrealist painter, as the sniffer of life, the person who would decide when your life was over. So that was a little bit about that one. Another series I did, sometimes I work a little more abstractly. My stepmother and my dad and stepmom are scientists and geologists, and I grew up around a lot of rocks. I'm fascinated with rocks and stones and gems and minerals. And I was studying a lot of the stones, the really beautiful stones and rocks we have in Texas. And sometimes when you get a polished slab, they're just beautiful. So what I was doing is I was trying to take, through a technique called, I was trying to replicate some of those rock formations in a technique called pour painting. And I will get maybe 6, 7, 8 cups of paint that contain the colors I was seeing in those rocks. And then I make one central cup, and I pour a mix of chemicals. I kind of wear a big hazmat suit, and I use a blowtorch, so I have to do the windows open and a big mask on. But I start layering the paint with bubbles form, and then I'll take my canvas that has an outline of U.S. or the U.S. or Texas, and then I pour that onto there, and then I take all of that bubbling, swirling paint with the chemicals in it, and I try to smush it around physically like this until it starts making shapes I like. Then I get a blowtorch, and I hit it with a blowtorch, which makes some of the chemical changes in the paint. It makes people who do pour painting call these cells. Whenever you get a dot pattern opening up, you're trying to get cells to open up when you do it. And then I would come back after that was dry, and I was using kind of a dry, chalky paint that to me resembles limestone, the calcium carbonate layers you see in the Edwards Plateau, where sometimes you can see some really interesting rock formations. And I wanted this to be a contrast between the real flat, chalky looking limestone areas that I was mimicking, and then I put a really, really high gloss on this section. So I wanted it to look like it kind of been excavated. There is a stone that's only found on one particular ranch, the Agua Nueva Ranch is one of the only places this agate is found, and that's an example of trying to duplicate that formation in a painting. And these are just some close-ups of, they're very, very intricate when you see them up close, but they're kind of satisfying to make. So I enjoy sort of abstract work sometimes too. One thing I was really touched to receive was the Hunt County Public Art Award. I received this group has funded so many wonderful public art pieces in Hunt County. If you ever have a chance to go look at their website and go see some of these artworks in person, they really have contributed a lot of funding so that artists can give something back to the community. And they pay all of the artists, so it's very nice. So it's good for us to get work, and it's good for the community to have all these wonderful pieces of public art. So if you have a chance to go to their website and go maybe do a driving tour someday of all the public art pieces, I'm really impressed with how many they've funded. This is an example of where I painted a mural in downtown Greenville. This is in the parking lot behind the Uptown Forum. This is actually on Dennis Payne's upholstery, the Payne's upholstery shop. So this is what it looked like beforehand. And this was my proposal. I wanted to show you the wall was in really bad shape. We had to do a lot to get it fixed up. But when I first started, I drew roughly an idea of what I wanted it to look like. And then on the computer, I tried to project my mural idea and then rough people shapes. That was supposed to be like a photo area for people so they could do some fun photo ops there. And here's some shots of us working. My wonderful husband, Adam, we moved here because Adam took a job at L3, so that's how we came to be in Greenville. And these are my wonderful daughters, Violet and Piper Ruby. And he would come set up this really tall scaffold for me, and sometimes she'd play a little ukulele and keep me company. But I spent probably about 6 months painting this. I was really, really lucky to finish the week of the pandemic, the week the pandemic started. So I was so happy to get that done and not have, one letter left to finish. So I was kind of hampered by weather. I couldn't paint. I think my rule for myself was if it was 38 degrees or above, I would paint. But if it was 38 or below, I would stay home. So here's an example of it in progress. There's me. I wear my helmet when I climb. It get windy some days. That was my view for quite a few months. People ask how I would do the fish sometimes. What I would do is I would draw them at home on my husband's garage walls. I would use a projector, one of those little tiny projectors, and I would project it, and I would put out huge pieces of paper, and I would trace the outline, and then I would meticulously cut it out, and then I would roll them up, and then I would take them to the work site, and I would figure out by measuring where I wanted them, and then I would take them up, and I would chalk an outline of them, and then from there I would paint the large fishes. I would work. I'm interested in conservancy. I really think we need to be good stewards of our land and nature, and I think one of the ways to do that is to appeal to children on some level, because they are the next generation of people coming up. Our state and national park memberships are lower than ever. I really hope we can find a way to help keep these parks, these beautiful natural spaces set aside for us going, and I hope that maybe by making these a little more approachable to families and things like that, it can interest people in some nature we have around here. And one of the wonderful things we have in Hunt County is a wealth of lakes with a lot of native fish, and a lot of fishermen really enjoy it. So I tried to paint only fish that were found native to Hunt County and North Texas lakes, and obviously there's stylized versions of them. They're highly stylized because I wanted to make them more colorful and fun, but they all do kind of have an educational aspect to them because they all are found in our lakes. So I would create versions of them. This would be my first pass, and I would paint something like this. Then I would come in another day when that had dried and start adding more detail until I got to the final phases like that. So these were like little worksheets I would set up for myself every day to look at as I worked. And then I just painted and painted and painted and painted. These are some of the fish. One nice tradition I've had a lot of feedback from people is I created a birthday fish, and I intentionally painted it kind of down low in the mural, and a lot of people go get their birthday picture taken there. Sometimes they'll bring balloons because it has a fish bobber balloon, but I've seen a lot of really nice pictures people have sent me when they get their birthday picture taken with the birthday fish, so that makes me happy. Oh, and that one was knitting. Did you see that one knitting? That was knitting. Everybody's knitting. I let my Girl Scout troop vote on patches for this one. As you can see, the wall was pretty rough. Sometimes they were really big chunks I was trying to paint on, but I thought they were so clever to stranger danger. There's a fish hook, don't take it. I thought fire building was a funny one for a fish to get. So. Oh, and I hid, let me see. I hid Nadine somewhere in here. Yeah, there she is. I hid Nadine the nasty narwhal for my comic strip up there on the patch. I like to hide things in all my paintings and murals and things. This is a catfish. Get it? Is bird watching? And that just reminds me kind of the gossipy old lady. Anyway, I had fun creating this cast of characters. So that's the final mural. UBU, I really would like to encourage all people, especially young people. I think sometimes when people do anything that's not conformist or they're a little different, people kind of resist that. And I just really hope everyone will encourage the young people in your life to just go do what makes you happy. As long as you're not hurting anyone and you're doing something productive, if you feel drawn to do something, go do that. This was a photo area I made by the largemouth bass, and I designed it so that when we have our cell phones, it's a ratio that works with most cell phone, social media ratios and shapes, so that I hope people would enjoy taking photos with that. Here's the guy that owns the upholstery shop, the wall it's painted on. And I'll see pictures of people sticking their head in the big mouth bass. That's another one. I always see people sticking their head. It's fun to go watch people interact with it. This is just a lovely soul named Eleanor I met. I had nice people that would come visit me while I was painting. One thing that really touched me is a woman I know named, it's the Dreer family. Their youngest son is colorblind, and she did a pretty nice fundraiser with their church and just community to get him this, I think they're pretty expensive pair of glasses that allow colorblind people to see color. And she took him to the mural to try the glasses on for the very first time, and that's the first time he's seen color before, as most people would consider it. So that was him on his color day, and that made me happy. Anyway, that kind of wraps up my art portion of this. Does anybody have any questions?
Tell us about the Girl Scouts, the leader.
Girl Scouts, yes. When my daughters go to Lone Oak, and I think think they had a troop there a long time ago, but maybe the people had grown up and they'd gone off. So I started a Girl Scouts troop in town, and I just love it. I love camping. I'm happy I have girls. I really like girls and girly stuff, and they're just fun. I have everything from kindergartners all the way up to middle school kids, and we get together and we do a little bit of everything. I really like Girl Scouts because it's not just, I think sports are important, but with Girl Scouts, you can do something new every time, and for a lot of the girls in the community, I think it's the first experience they get for things. It may be the first time they sew. It may be the first time they go to a museum. It may be the first time they try shooting a bow and arrow, and I think it really helps build their confidence, and it's nice to have, in a big city Girl Scout troop, you might only have a first grade troop or something like that, but because we're rural, we have all these ages of girls together, and it really helps foster a nice spirit of community with the older girls. It's kind of a big sister, little sister dynamic. And one thing we particularly enjoyed doing in the past is we had a sleepover at the Perot Museum. They used their cookie money, and we let them vote on what they want to do, and we got to sleep in the Perot Museum. Yeah, and they had all kinds of educational activities. One choice was to sleep under the dinosaurs, but some of the little ones were a little scared of that. So we slept in the big gym room instead. Have any of you been to the Perot Museum? Oh, it's beautiful. They just have these beautiful display cases like this. So we got to set up our sleeping bags under all the gyms and do that. So we had a lot of fun. We just had our welcome back picnic last weekend, so it's nice to see all those little faces again. And we go to camp. We go to speaking of the Perot Museum, the Perot family left money for the Betty Perot camp, Ross Perot's sister, and that's one of our favorite camps we go to. We try to go every year. It's out near Palestine, and a lot of the girls have gotten to horseback riding. For a lot of them, that was the first time they've gotten to ride horses, and they have things like rope courses that are sky high and shooting bows and arrows. It's just fun. I really like doing that. Were any of you Girl Scouts? Yay! Girl Scouts start growing up into good people. That's what it is. Well, if there's nothing else, I will leave you with hopefully a winding down, peaceful heart piece before we all go for the day. But this one will leave you some peace to go into the rest of your day with. So let me move my heart back. Ooh, this thing is heavy. I have a couple of smaller ones, but this is my largest heart.
What does it weigh?
This weighs about 80 pounds. I started playing harp with my oldest daughter, who's now in middle school, but boy, that kid never liked to sleep. So she had her days and nights mixed up. So I bought a little lap harp. I play piano, and it's pretty similar to piano. If you play piano, you know how a scale is C to C. It's the same with the harp. It's C, D, E, F, G, A, E, C. So it's laid out like a scale. So you play the bass notes with your left hand and the melody with your right hand. A pedal harp is what you see in the big concert halls. They have pedals kind of like you see on a piano, and that makes the notes sharp and flat. This is a petite concert lever harp, and that means that I change to sharps and flats by moving these levers. So that's what makes this make different sounds. So it's very hard to change to a sharp or flat while I play, but the people that have those other the pedal harps do it with their feet while they play. But I set mine before I play, so it always takes me a second to get things where I need it to be. All right, I think I have this set right. But if I throw out a clam, just close your ears. All right, this piece, one thing I'd like to pursue when my children are older is therapy harp. I'm interested in playing. I do a little bit of it just personally, but I'd like to pursue more of a degree in playing for people in hospitals, in hospice, playing for premature infants, things like that. There's a lot of studies that have shown that harp in particular, over any other instrument, I think it has something to do with the vibrations. It all sounds a little woo-woo, but they have done a lot of studies where harp really does help, even when patients are unconscious. It really helps with blood pressure, it helps slow heart rates, it helps respiration rates. So it seems to be a very soothing instrument. And even if none of that is scientifically provable, it's a very peaceful instrument that helps people relax. And I think it's just kind of it's a gift to give someone that's in pain or hurting, and it's something that can help families too. So sometimes I like to play the most soothing pieces I can find. So this piece is called Floating.
Yes, it is in downtown Greenville behind the Uptown Forum. It's in the parking lot behind the Uptown Forum off of Lee Street. It's actually on the wall of Payne's Upholstery Shop. So you kind of have to go that little corner jog around there. And someone backed a trailer hitch into it last week, so I need to go repair it. Yeah, people always back it. You know, it's kind of a tight parking spot. I can really understand, but some people have backed into it, and I need to go touch it up a little bit. So.
Well, we'd like to thank Laura for coming and thank all you guys for being here. And we'll be meeting back. Who's our speaker
Next
next
one,
month?
Sharon Kowalski from Texas A&M University is coming to speak. And we also have next month, we are doing our Cotton and Wool History Conference on November 20th as well. So, yeah. All right. Well, thank you guys.